Why did it happen? Where does it come from? What is it? Well, as William Lind says, it didn't just happen. In fact, a deliberate agenda was followed to steal, to destroy traditional culture and leave a new and very different one in its place. The story of how and why is one of the most important parts of this nation's history, and it is a story almost no one knows. Well, the people behind it wanted it that way. What happened, in short, is that America's traditional culture, as well as Europe's culture, which had developed and grown up over generations, was swept aside by an ideology, very hostile ideology. Over the last 50 or so years, America has been conquered basically by the same force that earlier in the 20th century took over Russia. And that force, yes, it has also pretty much same ideology. That ideology has inflicted enormous damage on the traditional culture it came to dominate, fracturing it everywhere and sweeping much of it away. In its place came fear and ruin. It happened in Russia. It is happening here now. The ideology that has taken over America is, yes, it is Marxism. Same old Marxism, same communist ideology. But it goes today here most commonly by some new cryptic name, liberalism. And here I want to kind of make, again, comment that this word liberalism is just as distorted in American English language as the word football is distorted. In the whole world, world football means one game. In this country, for some reason, it means different, and there was invented new word, soccer, for football. Same thing is about liberalism. If you say word liberal in many European countries, it means something a little to the right from what Republicans are in this country. And here, for some reason, it means leftist, basically leftist, communist. Also, this is known as something called political correctness. And many people, I know, tend still to think of this political correctness thing as only half serious or even as a joke. But it's not. In fact, it's a deadly serious thing. Because political correctness was a phrase originally used in Communist Party intellectual circles in the 1930s and 1940s. It was the great disease of 20th century, the disease that has left tens of millions of people dead in Russia, in China, indeed around the world. It is the disease of this Marxist ideology, and this political correctness is what reminds me of cultural revolution in Maoist China. When if you say something, we put this hat that reminded Inquisition hats that in Middle Ages in Spain we used to put, and they just walk you on the street because of what you said or what you thought. So this PC thing, as people say, it's not personal computer. It's not funny. This PC is deadly serious thing. Believe me, I've been there and I saw that thing. Because it is still alive and well here and now. This diabolically crafted idea of political correctness is a Machiavellian psychological command and control device. Its purpose is the imposition of uniformity in thought, speech, and behavior. It seeks to alter virtually all the rules, formal and informal, that govern relations among people and institutions. It wants to change behavior, thought, even the words you use. To a significant extent, it already has. Wherever or whatever controls language also controls thought. If we look at it analytically, if we look at it historically, we quickly find out exactly what it is. As I just said, today's so-called liberalism here, with its political correctness, really is nothing but cultural Marxism. It is Marxism translated from economic into cultural terms. And it is an effort that goes back not to the 1960s, but back to World War I and Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. Incredible as it may seem, just as the old-fashioned Marxism of the Soviet Union has faded away, a new cultural Marxism, or as it is sometimes called Western Marxism or even humanist Marxism, has becoming the ruling ideology in both America and Europe. The number one goal of that cultural Marxism today, and as it was since its creation, has been the destruction of Western culture and Western civilization. If we compare the basic tenets of today's so-called liberalism and its political correctness with classical Marxism, the parallels are very obvious. First of all, both are totalitarian ideologies. The totalitarian nature of political correctness is revealed nowhere more clearly today than on American college campuses, many of which at this point are already becoming like small ivy-covered North Koreas, where the student or faculty member who dares to cross any of the lines set up by the, let's say, feminist or homosexual rights activists or some black or Hispanic or Jewish or Muslim group or any of the other sainted victim groups of PC revolves around, quickly find themselves in trouble. And we at the University of Oregon's in Pacifica Forum know that very well. That is a little look in the future that political correctness intends for the nation as a whole. Indeed, all ideologies are totalitarian because the essence of an ideology is to take some philosophy and say on the basis of this philosophy certain things must be true, such as, for example, that the whole of the history of Western civilization is the history of the oppression of Jews. You know, Holocaust and stuff like that. Since reality contradicts that, reality must be forbidden. It must become forbidden to acknowledge the reality of our history. People must be forced to live a lie, and since people are naturally reluctant to live a lie, they naturally use their ears and eyes to look out and say, wait a minute, this isn't true. I can see it isn't true. The power of the state, then, must be put behind the demand to live a lie. That is why ideology invariably creates a totalitarian state. So yes, the parallels are very evident between the classical Marxism that we are familiar with and lived under it in this old Soviet Union and the cultural Marxism that I see reincarnated today as so-called liberalism and political correctness here in America and also in Europe. But the parallels are not accidents. The parallels did not come from nothing. The fact of the matter is that political correctness has a history that is much longer than most people except maybe a small group of academics who have studied this are aware of. To understand anything, we have to know its history. To understand who stole your culture and are destroying your civilization, you need to take a look at the history of political correctness or cultural Marxism. This is what we are going to do today. Indeed, a thoughtful person should ask himself or herself or whether or not all this change from America's traditional culture is simply a random set of events played out by a random set of players, all independent of each other, all disconnected from any central premise or guidance. It is entirely possible that chance is at work here, and all of these threads of American culture are the random workings of the human intellect, the pursuit of what is possible, wise, what is appropriate in a free and democratic society. Now, but suppose you were to learn that all of the changes are completely consistent with a design, that is a concept, a way of thinking, and a process of bringing it about. And suppose one could identify a core group of people who designed just such a concept and taught through the process of infusing it into our culture. Wouldn't you be interested in at least learning about such a core group? Wouldn't you want to know who they were, what they taught, and how they conjured up a process for bringing their thoughts into action? For anyone with even a smidgen of curiosity, the answer should be a resounding yes.